Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Hello. If you are watching the replay, thank you so much for joining us or watching later. We are going to get started. I am so excited to talk with our guest today, who is Danica Moise, Ph.D. candidate and for special education. So let me read her bio for you and we will go from there. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, y'all can see me. Yes. Okay. Roll. Here we go. Danica Moise is a first-generation scholar and daughter to two immigrant parents from Haiti. She is currently completing her Ph.D. in exceptional education at the University of Central Florida. With a background in speech therapy, special education, and applied behavioral analysis, Danica has spent her career working with children with autism from disadvantaged schools and underserved communities. She aspires to improve the academic, social, emotional, and adult trajectory outcomes for students with disabilities through research, advocacy, and infusing culturally relevant practices. Tell me that does not sound.
Ooh, you made me sound good. I was like, who's that?
Look, that's your bio, okay? Okay, so some of this we already said, so I'm going to skip that. We just did your bio, but I do want to ask specifically, in case anyone doesn't know, what is someone who is in your field? What does like a day-to-day look like for you for someone who does the work that you do?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, Brittany. We go way back to undergrad and college, and it's just so beautiful to see you on this platform. I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
And I would
thank you.
say, of course, the day-to-day, mine is actually transition. So right now, I'm a PhD student, so it's all academic based. I'm in school learning how to do research. I still work part-time, and prior to my PhD, my day looks like I have a client and it's wherever he or she needs me. So typically I worked in the home setting, helping kids with autism, sometimes other disabilities, but predominantly autism, going at home, helping them with anything from communications if they don't have vocal speech, helping them with daily living skills, with potty training. They could have some dangerous behaviors that they may need some help with. And I might follow them to school. I might do some advocacy work in an IEP meeting for them. But literally, I'll have a client and I'll say, like, what do you need from me? And then based on whatever they need, that's just kind of where I am. My day could be anything from working on potty training to going to a dentist visit and like literally helping them just regulate their cells if they're in a stressful environment. Like, a dentist is really scary. And when you have sensory issues, it's heightened. So yeah, my day can look like whatever my kid needs it to look like.
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess that sounds fun though, because I guess every day like isn't the same, so it doesn't get boring. Okay.
Mm-mm.
That's so good. Okay, sorry, I'm turning up my volume just a little bit because my
Yeah,
children are not asleep. So I want to make sure I hear you and not them.
I love
Okay,
it. The natural environment.
okay. Let's see, we already covered that. So for people, I had Dr. Rochelle Whitaker on here, and I've had other people that I've interviewed, but I would just like for you to also share about your credentials, like the work that you have done or what degrees or certifications that you have, just
Yeah.
because I want to make sure people know that just like with Dr. Rochelle, I have people who actually have degrees. There is nothing wrong with the honorary, but when we're talking about getting resources and education and things like that, I just want to make sure people know who they're listening to. So could you share about your
Yeah.
knowledge?
Absolutely. So I actually started off wanting to become a speech language pathologist, so the SLP. So I got my bachelor's degree in communication sciences and disorders. That's typically the title if you're getting a bachelor's degree. And then when you get a master's, it's typically speech language pathology. So I started in communication sciences and disorders. And I was honestly, I just knew I wanted to work with kids with autism. And I will say that I learned so much more. There's so many other branches you can go with SLP. You can be an SLP and work with people who have issues with aphasia or stroke patients or accent reduction. Speech isn't limited to this autism work. So after I got that degree and I started doing a little bit more research and learning more, I ran into this field called applied behavior analysis, which is ABA. And I got my master's degree in applied behavior analysis. And what that looked like was 2 years of coursework. I had to do clinical hours. I had to do 1,500 clinical hours. And then I had to take a board exam. So that total package helped me become a BCBA. And then right now I'm kind of transitioning into, I always want to be a clinician, but I wanted to learn how to do research and grant writing. I wanted to learn how to get money to help those underserved communities. And I realized I was like, okay, well, and that's why I'm getting my PhD. So the PhD does not help me become a better clinician in any way, shape, or form. Like I've kind of capped out of where I could go in degree wise. Getting a PhD was more so like, okay, I wanted to infiltrate the higher ups. I want to learn about grant work. I wanted to learn how to teach people how to work with kids with special needs. So that's where my PhD came from. So I always tell people, you can go multiple ways. You can go straight through with speech language pathology. I got a bachelor's in speech. I switched to ABA and got a master's there. And then my PhD is literally completely research based, grant work. I have to, get publication. So it's so different, but I think the complete package truly is going to help me fulfill the calling in my life. So that's kind of where I am now.
That is so good. I love it. Okay. And last thing for our intro, I think this is it. Ooh, let's see here. How long have you been in your field?
I started in this field, I would say when I was 20 years old. So when I was
Okay.
a junior in undergrad, we had to start doing clinical hours and interning and
Oh, wow.
volunteering. So
Okay.
since I was 20, I've been working with kids with special needs, and I'm 32 now. So that puts me 12 years. But if I'm being honest, I grew up at churches, helping in the children's ministry, and I was always attracted to those kids who needed a little extra help. So I'm like 14 years old in church helping the kid. And I didn't know at the time what autism was. I just knew like they needed that extra support and I wanted to give it to them. So I always tell people, technically I started at 20, but if I really look at the trajectory of my life, I've been doing this since I was like 12.
Oh
I've
my
been doing it
goodness.
my whole life, not even realizing that I was working with kids with special needs, assisting them. And when you think about what children's church look like and how they need that extra accommodations, the extra support, that one-on-one, I've been doing it my whole life. But it's funny how life turns out.
Yes, and that kind of goes into a different question. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask, is
Yeah.
that what caused you to go into your field to get that bachelor's, did you or did you just say, this sounds interesting, I'm going to choose it?
Yeah. So a little bit more background about me. My family's from Haiti, and my parents are immigrants. I was born here, but honestly, I feel like I was born in Haiti. The section of Miami that I was in, I was surrounded in that Haitian culture. And I had a cousin where we're 3 weeks apart. And he was autistic, but we didn't know that at the time. So this is like 19, I was born 91. This is like 94, 95. We're like, something's wrong here. And he would get in a lot of trouble. He would, get a lot of punishment because culturally we just didn't understand what was wrong with him. It was he's not listening, he's disrespectful, but the truth is he just wasn't comprehending. There was cognitively he needed extra support. He didn't understand social cues. And I remember saying like, I want to help him. So I didn't really know didn't know the word autism until later on in life. And I just knew I wanted to help kids with autism. And even that sent me on a whole nother journey because, every two kids with autism is different. So I literally started because my cousin, we're 3 weeks apart. I was like, I want to help you. I want to be able to communicate with you. And I think it was like 4 or 5 when I made that declaration. And then as I've learned so much more, it's shifted and changed because it's so multifaceted. I think people say this all the time. No two people with autism are the same. So then it was like, okay, where do I want to specialize? How do I want to help them? Where do I want to help them? And that's kind of what I've moved around, but the overall focus was children with autism. And that I think has kind of been the same since I was like 5.
Oh my goodness.
I
That
know.
um Dr. Rochelle said the same thing. I believe she said she had a male boy cousin, and when she was thinking back on like what might have been a seed that was planted in her mind, she thought about
Yeah.
him. So that's crazy. Like how you have someone in your family and you don't fully know, but there's something there and you're like, I want to help. But you said 4 or 5 years old making that declaration. I'm like, that's
I
crazy.
did. I
That's
remember to this day the conversation. I still play this back. We were at another family member's house, and the family member had a pool. And all he kept trying to say is like, could this fit in the pool? So I'm like, how was your day? He was like, could a moon fit in the pool? And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, could the sun fit? And literally he just could not talk to me. Like he was fixated on what he was seeing. And that's all he wanted to talk about. And at that moment, I was like, why won't you talk to me? And I was like, I'm going to fix you. I was so little. And I went to my mom. I was like, we called him Kiki. We got to fix Kiki, mommy. We have to fix Kiki so he can talk to me. And I've always been talkative. So my mom was like, okay, baby, fine. But remember, my mom always like, you remember that moment? You're like, you wanted to fix. Granted, you can't fix and there's nothing to fix. But at the time, my little brain was like, I got to help him. And literally, I remember the conversation about in front of a pool. That's all we kept talking about. I think it was like an hour and all he wanted to talk about that pool. And I said, this was the moment where I was like, I'm going to help him. And yeah, I remember it. Like, I can't remember a lot of things, but that specific moment, I think God kind of made sure I remember like a core memory so that whenever I always tell people this field can get hard. And whenever I need to remember my why, I'm brought back to like 4 or 5-year-old Danica in that specific moment and just saying like how I went full circle. And I'm like, you know what? Thank you, God. I'm so grateful to be here. Literally, what are the odds, that I'm still here? So that I've forever been grateful for.
Oh my goodness. That's so good. Yeah. I like, it's so interesting when people tell me they know what they want to do from when they were little, because I remember thinking probably in middle school, I need like 10 lives because I want to do like everything. So I don't know that. I don't know that thought process of having one thing and sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I tried. I was just like, I'm just going to do 10 things. Yeah, I've decided. So my brain could never choose one thing. So that's amazing. Okay. I think you already answered that, so we'll skip that part. So now, if you will change a little bit and talk about the families that you work with, how how is you working with them helping to change their family dynamic or maybe the trajectory of the child's life? How are you impacting or changing the family and the children that you work with?
Yeah, so I will say it's two parts to that question. When I started in this field, God, I'm a very faith-based person. So for me, I literally know there's so many moments in my life that were just God because I couldn't have orchestrated it. But I literally, long story short, just ran into a woman and she got me my first job working in applied behavior analysis field. And she had very families with high incomes. So they had a lot of money. They had money to spend. And what that looked like was they had nannies, they had chefs, and they just needed me to come in and like they had full support. Their parents, anything I needed, they ordered it on Amazon. So this was just my idea, like, wow, this is amazing. And I love just to see how I was able to help them understand autism more. I was able to help the kids communicate, use their words, whether it was like on a device or their actual vocal speech, helping them. I had a lot of kids with dangerous behaviors. That's kind of something I specialize in. So a lot of them would hit their heads, bang their heads, they bite themselves, they throw things. I had a knife thrown at me. Tough, crazy times. And so just kind of helping them in that area. The family did not know, and they needed that everyday support. And one day I got really good really fast because I'm a people person. Someone in my family needed assistance, and I didn't realize that I only worked with high income earning families. So then I switched to a Haitian family because I needed a translator because they were like, I don't understand this woman. And I was like, oh, cool. So as a favor to someone, I translated, and the environment was so different. They did it, the quality of services was so much lower because of socioeconomic issues. So the more money the parents make, the better access to therapists they would get, the better access to training, because the more money you spend, the more you can train your therapist. And it was crazy for me to see like the same thing, the same field looks so much different in an underserved community. So that's kind of where things pivoted for me. I was grateful for what I learned, and I know for a fact I needed that foundation because the families I worked for would literally say, oh, you need a training? I'll pay for that. They would literally pay hundreds of dollars and send me to trainings to assist their kids. And then with, underserved communities, that's not the case. They don't have anything. I started buying toys on my own, printing supplies on my own, literally. But I just saw how much more they needed me. And that's kind of just been my focus. This is kind of why I went to get my PhD, because I was like, all right, I only got so much money. I need some of this government money to help these kids. So I got to learn how to do research. I'm kind of like Robin Hood. I'm like, let me go steal from the rich, give it to the poor. So that's kind of like how things have shifted for me, just seeing how access to better quality therapy, and seeing that new story, these families who are used to not getting and it's not even the best therapist. It's almost like having a public defender. You have a therapist with 50 kids because they're all on Medicaid and they're paying the minimum, versus a family that, has a therapist only has 5 clients because they pay more. So they don't get the attention that they need. They don't get the support that they need. I've done so much pro bono work, but just seeing the difference that it makes, and how one family that I impacted, especially in the Haitian community, they started telling other families. They started realizing like autism wasn't a curse. Their kids weren't demon possessed. And just working with one family, they affected 5 other families. Like, hey, we're wrong about autism. So, I will definitely say that new story for me was, and every family deserves support. I'm not saying that they don't. I just know for me personally, God placed on my heart to really give that attention and focus to underserved communities and families, because one, that translation for Haitian communities, two, that culturally relevant strategies, because even within the Black and Brown community, a lot of Hispanics moms, they would be able to connect with me more because we understood each other and our culture was similar. So yeah, and just seeing how but you don't know what you don't know. And being able to educate them and tell them so much more about autism literally changed their whole lives and how they see the world and how they see their kids. Their kids went from being, some of them would tell me like, oh, they're mentally retarded. I was like, no, they're not. They just need the tools to communicate with you. And once I gave it to them, they were like, they are communicating. It might not be words like out their mouth, but they can point and touch and grab my hand and use devices. And it really made a new story for underserved communities to see how, with the right supports, their kids will make so much progress, so much. So
I love it. Ooh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so I've heard. I would like for you to speak on this a little bit. I'm just going to insert this question. I think it'll be okay. The
yeah,
earlier you get help, the better. Yes.
absolutely. It's like, I always use the tree analogy. When a tree is first growing and it's growing crooked, I remember my dad would tie 2 sticks to it to kind of make it go, to make sure it continued to grow straight. But once it's too curved, it's a lot harder to kind of like form it to go straight. So I always tell the families early intervention is key. Like at that beginning stages, kids, their neurotransmitters their synapses are growing so fast. And it's almost like some parents wait until they're like 4, 5, 6. I was like, I have kids that are 18 months old and they close that gap a lot closer, a lot faster, because they got that age so much smaller, because kids are sponges. That's even the same theory when they say that if you teach a kid a second or third language when they're little, they have a better chance of retaining it than when they're like 7, 8, 9, 10. If you start when they're little, the better. And I know I'm not a mom yet. I hope one day God blesses with me with that. But one thing I've learned from listening to families is like, you have this little baby, your pride and joy. And it's like, I'm just getting you're here to tell me something's wrong or they need assistance. And I just not ready for it. And I've learned to have so much compassion and understanding for that, because I do have moms who say, I'm just not ready for this whole world of therapy. I know they should start now, but I'm just gonna have to wait. And I respect it, but I always say, if you have the means, the earlier the better. If you're noticing some issues with eye contact, if you're noticing issues with motor, please find a specialist. I'm begging parents, talk to your pediatricians. Don't keep things in secrecy, because they can help you so much at a young age. And I know it's scary. I know it's tough. And I'm not even a parent, and I know it's tough, but you'll never regret getting your kids help that they end up not needing, opposed to the other way around. Like I've had parents who like, oh, actually, I don't think it's autism. I think it's something else. There was no harm in getting them that therapy for 6 months, and insurance covers a lot. And I've learned a lot of families don't even know. It's like, depending on if you have Medicaid or other things, there are ways to get funding. If you're in the state of Florida, there's a program called Early Steps that will, provide funding. So there are options and opportunities. You just have to have those conversations and be willing to be open. And I know it's tough. I'm never going to judge a parent for saying, I just wasn't mentally ready. I just want to know, when you are ready, there are people to just hold your hand through the process.
So good. Thank you for speaking to that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you kind of answered this already. So if you don't have anything else, then I'll go to the next one. But this
Yeah.
question is, why do you think families have a hard time um, getting help in this area that you work in? And you answered it. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add or if that was it.
Had a little bit more. I think, especially, and I can only speak to the communities I mostly work in, which is the Haitian community and the Black community. It's just this one lack of trust, because a lot of times the people that they have to talk to don't look like me. So it's a lack of trust with the practitioners that are before them. It's also a fear of, if I don't go to the doctor, my kid is fine. Once I go and I get all these diagnoses, and it is a lot. I won't even lie. When I started this field, I was overwhelmed. It's a lot of paperwork, documentations, assessments. One person is referring you to another person, so it's just overwhelming. You have so much to do, and it's hard. And I definitely get it. And there's also the stigma of, I don't want people to think something's wrong with my child, but you'll never regret getting early intervention, whether they don't need it in the future. So yeah.
So good. Okay, so if you have any, can you give some practical tips that parents can use or maybe that they can do with their child if there's anything that you can think of? If they're like, I think something's here and maybe they're in that between stage, do you have any tips for them?
Yeah, I always tell the parents, read with your kids. You will find out a lot just from reading with them. From, if you have joint attention, meaning you're both focusing on the same thing at the same time, from depending on their ages. You can read all this on the internet now. Times have changed the last 10 years. Everything's a touch of the finger. The certain amount of words they should be making, I would say it's not a bad thing if they don't have great eye contact, but sometimes it's a cue to investigate something further. If they have a lot of sensory issues, like textures bother them, if you notice that they walk on their toes a lot, again, it's not a bad thing. It's just also notifying you, like, okay, I'm seeing some things here. Let me ask another professional if they, notice the rest. But the biggest thing is sit down with them, try to read with them, and kind of go from there. Are they sitting and attending with you? Are they able to, pick up some words? Can they point? And also, how do they ask you for things? Are they requesting? Are they pulling your hand? Are they pointing? Or do they, not do any of that? And also dangerous behaviors. If you see them hitting themselves, and excessive amount of hitting others, but really that's self-injury. So like biting themselves, hitting themselves on the head, smacking themselves on the head, and self-stimulatory behaviors. It's not a bad thing, but if you see them doing a lot of like maybe flapping or a lot of movement with their hands, or excessively, not because I click a pin, but like excessive, self-stimulatory behaviors, that's maybe a sign for you to like, okay, let's dig a little bit further to see if there's anything else I need to worry about.
Okay, that's so good. And then after we did the tips, so do you have any resources that parents can go to? So I'm trying to think of maybe like a directory, or since you work with the
Mm.
Haitian community, Black and Brown people, is there like maybe some kind of resource for that if you're looking for a person of color to be your the person you work with or anything like that?
Yeah, it's tough because even in my field as a BCBA, only 3.1% of us are African Americans, and then only 2.1% of PhD holders are Black women. So honestly, there is not enough of me to go around. Literally, it breaks my heart sometimes. But I do always tell them, if they are under the age of 3, then talk to their pediatrician and get a referral to start with early steps. Literally, someone from the government will be at your house and they'll be able to do that assessment and give you next steps. Also, if they are in school, their school age, get talk with the school, and it's okay to get them on an IEP. It's okay to get them on a 504 plan, because what that means is that the government is going to give you more money to assist them. Another thing, a lot of parents don't know is, and this is state of Florida specific, but if your kid is in school, they're homeschool, and they have special needs, there's still government money for you. So the government allots, I want to say maybe like, let's say $5,000 a year additional. They will give you that $5,000 for therapy support. So the biggest thing is, if you're home, figure out, it's called the Gardner Scholarship. Figure out, okay, let me get that money so I can use it for homeschool. If they're under the age of 3, I would say early steps. If they're in school, go ahead and get that IEP plan, talk with the teachers. But these days, I will say teachers are doing a great job of notifying parents when they're seeing some flags, like things that, like, hey, let's schedule a meeting. So if they're in school, for the most part, a lot of parents are talking about, like, yeah, the teacher is the one who brought this up to me because they spend so much time with them. And when your kids get home, they're also really tired, you know. But that meat of the day, that like 9 to 3 p.m., the teacher gets to see them fresh and raw. So, you know, definitely, you know your kid better than anyone else, but don't neglect the notes and the information that they're sending home with you.
That's so good. Okay. And next question. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a story of a family that you work with that maybe started at a really rough place or they needed a lot of help, and then you got to see maybe the end or a large jump in progression?
I will actually, so this past, oh my gosh, October, actually was in Nairobi. So I was in Kenya and I did a service trip. And the whole mission of the trip was to not only assist a center that worked with kids with special needs, but go out in the community and tell families about what autism is and tell them about this clinic that could assist them. And I think for me, there was, okay. The trip that I went on was predominantly white practitioners. I was the only Black practitioner in my team. So there was something about them seeing another Black woman on the trip explaining to them that autism is not a death sentence. Autism is not the end all be all. You know, there's so much that we can do. And I think for me, just seeing parents, it's so different in these countries. Like, they'll lock their kids away. You won't even know that they have autistic children. So seeing them take their kids out these like rooms that they've lived in for years and taking them out of hiding and bringing them to these centers to say, like, okay, let's get some help. That, oh, my heart, I was like sobbing, because for me, I was like, they made that first step. And
Yeah.
I could never understand what it's like to live in those conditions, but I can only imagine what they assume is shame and what they assume is like a curse on their family. So let me just hide it in secrecy. That'll be better. Or the people are going to think I sinned, which is why I have this child. But that's not the case. And they were literally like, let me get a second opinion. God does love me and God does love this child as well. So let me try and get them some help that they need. Waterworks. I was like sobbing, seeing the parents that were like, okay, I will do this. So that was a beautiful thing.
Okay, so quick aside, how
Yeah.
did that come about? And were you just like, did you jump to the opportunity, or did it like throw off your schooling? You had to think about, do I really want to do this? Like, tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
So funny thing is, in 2019, I knew I needed a change. I was just in this, I don't know if rut is the right word, this rut of like, I just need a change in my life. I just need to do something different. I was in school for a really long time, like back to back studying. And I was like, God, I just need something different. So I was going to quit my job at the top of 2020, you know where this story is going. So I was like, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go to Africa and serve. And then I'm just going to let God use me, like just wherever happens, happens. I was always going to travel with this team. And then the pandemic happened. So the trip got canceled. We couldn't go. And I got bored. And I was like, God, what else is there to do? And that's when I found out about this PhD program and I started it. And God is so amazing, because I'm so happy I went when I went, because I can't imagine a more perfect trip between the people I went with and me being able to receive so much more of it. So literally, this was a trip I was supposed to take 4 years ago in the top of 2020, and it got canceled. And they were like, "Hey, we're starting to travel again. You know, do you want to go?" And it was so hard because I'm in the middle of school. But my advisor, I love her so much, was like, "I think you need this trip. Go." So I literally took a month off from school to prepare, to go, to come back and recover and do this full experience. And then I actually changed my whole dissertation study to reflect it, because I was like, I love this. But yeah, it was just a 2019 trip. I was like, I just need to, like those eat, pray, love journeys. I was like, I just gotta go. I need to leave. And that's what it was. And then the pandemic, I was like, no, you're staying right here. So I didn't get to go. I thought I'd never go. I was like, in 2020, we're never leaving the country. We're stuck here forever. We're living bubbles. And then the world opened back up and they restarted the organization. And I was so much more prepared to go on that trip. Like literally, I couldn't, this girl I was in 2019 and the girl I was on this trip was two different people. So I'm happy I got to go. Yeah, it was phenomenal. And the organization is called Global Autism Project. They go to countries all over the world. They go to India, they go to Central America, South America, Europe, Africa, and literally, I know America isn't perfect, but when you see that they don't even have any of the supports that we have in other countries, you can't help but want to give and serve. And I'm Haitian too, so I also want to go to Haiti and do that, but our country's just not in a good place. Like that's just not possible right now. So I was like, well, if I can't go to Haiti, let me go to the motherland. And I went to Africa, and that's kind of how it started off. But yeah, it was good.
Oh my goodness, that's good. Okay, we got like I think one more question, two more questions, and then we're done.
This is fun. I'm here as long as you need me.
Okay. Um, you talked about that. You hinted on this a little bit, so if you don't have anything else, that's fine. But if there is a parent that is watching this and they are toying with the idea of getting help in your field, but they're not quite sure if they're really ready to do it, they're nervous, they're scared, whatever the case may be, what would be your encouragement to them?
I would honestly say, if I think my Instagram is tagged on here, DM me. I always tell people sometimes you just need to have a conversation before you jump 2 feet in. And I know so many of my practitioner friends are open to that as well. So if you see someone on Instagram who doesn't have a million followers and they're a practitioner, ask them, because it is a huge process. Before you even start therapy, you have to go to a pediatrician, get a referral to a psychologist, get a diagnosis, contact the insurance, get paperwork done and more assessments, and then they'll pay for it, and then the therapy. So it's a whole process. So I always tell them, like, just talk to a practitioner, send them an email, or just talk to a family member who's going through it with their kids. Go on YouTube, just hear more about it. Just take it as much, do your research. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Do your research as much as you need to do to feel comfortable, because I will never even sugarcoat it. Once you get on that ride, the beginning is like, whew, it's like a roller coaster, and it might take a while before you even find your equilibrium again. So have those conversations. If it's me, my Instagram's right there. Send me a DM. I answer them all the time, and I will gladly answer any questions sent my way.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and last question before we go into our rapid fire questions, which are more fun. Okay, last question. So we talked about the work you do with families and all of that, and now we're going to kind of change a little bit to somebody who wants to do what you do. So
Mm-hmm.
if someone is watching this and they are considering going into your field, but they're not sure about it, they don't know if they can finish, there's so much school, or maybe they feel like, what could I really do to make a difference, or who am I, or however you want to share to encourage them, what would you say?
I would say that in just working with kids with special needs is, we're at the deficit of hands. If you want to be a special education teacher, if you want to be a speech therapist, if you want to be a BCBA or an RBT, if you want to teach at the university level, there is not enough of us. There are literally grants giving out free money. I will say there's a catch. You got to work in the field for a few years, but there's so much free money out there because there's not enough of us. I will always say you will always have a job, right? So that's just that's one side of the coin. And then the other one is, this job fills my heart up so much. And that was my prayer. I wanted a job where I feel fulfilled. I felt like I made a difference. And literally, it doesn't take years to see it. You work with a kid one day, by Thursday, mom's like, oh my God, he just did this. And literally, I'm like dancing on a cloud. Like, you will never feel more fulfilled in your life, especially if you love working with kids with special needs. You will love it. There is so many different routes you can go, but it's such a beautiful thing. So if money is your issue, as far as, maybe there's grants, and I'll help you find it. And if you're a person of color, there are a lot of grants, and my PhD is free. And if you want to do, yeah, it's free. There's so much money. There's a catch. I've learned you got to do some service years, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. And then at the back end, you will never feel more fulfilled. And if you decide, so many of the therapists I supervise have always said, even if they changed careers, they took that knowledge, and a lot of them turned into nurses. A lot have switched from therapy to nursing. And they said they're so grateful they had their experience, because now they specialize. They do psychiatric mental health as nurses. They work in hospitals with kids with special needs that need that extra care. So you can literally take your experience and, go everywhere with it. I think when I started this field, it was like 1 in 84 kids have autism. Now it's like 1 in 36,
Oh my goodness.
and that's a whole nother conversation, but the numbers of kids diagnosed with autism is rising. So the need is also rising.
Yeah.
Literally, I can move to any state right now and find a job in 10 business days because there's just so much need and there's just not enough people to do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. I hope if you are considering doing or getting into her field, that is encouraging to you. Um, and I just want to say for parents, I hope that this interview has been encouraging to you and helpful. And this is, I don't love it, the fact that she said different communities and people that she's worked with, they felt like something was wrong or that they've sinned or that like they were shameful and keeping their kids away. I'm not happy about that, but I am very thankful that I have the ability to be able to share people like her and to help people who do come from communities where you don't know what to do. And so the child is maybe spanked more than what is needed or
Mhm.
excessively or whatever like that, or yelled at, or the parent just doesn't know what to do. And being able to hear somebody say, wait, this may be this. Have you considered this? So I love that. And if you have anybody or if you know someone who works with children, it doesn't have to be in this field, but anything where they can share their expertise, please let me know, DM me, message me, because I would love to be able to have more people to continue to do this because you need help as a parent. Or even if your child is normal, you need help, okay? Like you need help. I mean, everyone have their own versions of normal. So it's not that one is better than the other, but I'm just saying everybody needs help, okay? So that's that. Now let's get into these rapid fire questions and we are done.
Oh.
Okay. So what is the name of a book or a podcast that has helped you become a better special education what did I
Yeah,
say?
you just saying special education. Yeah,
Education.
in the field of special education. I would say there was a podcast called Uncomfortable BCBAs because they talked about before this was the norm. I think it was in 2018. They talked about so many uncomfortable topics that helped me as a clinician. So between cultural norms, they discuss racism, they discuss education, systematic disparities, they discuss social norms. And I think I needed that to think outside of the box. So I definitely recommend that podcast. I love it, love it. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 2. What song are you currently playing on repeat right now?
Ooh, it just transitioned because of Christmas. But there's a song called On Time God by Chandler Moore. I could not stop playing it. But once it hit December 1st, I was like, oh, Christmas time. And I've been listening to Nat King Cole, the Christmas song. I don't know why. I come home and it just sets the mood for me. I'm like, oh, I love Christmas. So yeah. Now I've transitioned to my Christmas music.
Okay. Next, when you were in school learning about your current field, was there
Mhm.
a class or an experience that almost made you reconsider staying in the field or continuing to your degree?
Oh, was there a class that made you want to leave or made you want to stay?
Mhm. Make you want to leave.
So statistics, and we were like, what? Because to do research you have to know how to do analyze data. So I had to take this statistic course and I was like, I'm not getting this PhD, there's no way. So even though I had nothing to do with I'm in a social science, I'm not a mathematician, I don't do chemistry, but I had to take the statistics class. And literally, I kid you not, I almost said, I don't need this PhD. Like it's okay. It's just not meant to be. But I ended up passing, thank God. And we're here. We're here now.
Yes, praise him.
Um,
Okay, 3 more and we're done. When
yeah.
was the last time you burned something? Food, clothing, hair, anything?
My clothes, I was ironing and then I left to go like grab my phone or something. And I didn't realize the iron was on the pants. I know that I came back and it burnt a hole. And and this was 2 weeks ago. I'm not even gonna act like it was 2 weeks ago. And I burnt one of my favorite pair of work pants. I was like, I'm too big to be burning clothes. But yeah, I burnt it.
We've had people burn fingers, all kinds of stuff. I heard some interesting stories.
Fingers.
Yes. I forgot. She something about a pot on the stove and she went to reach for it with her bare hand. Like,
I can see
oh,
that. I
yeah.
can see that.
What is a scripture you remind yourself of when you need encouragement in your field or on your job or in research?
Ephesians 3:20. That has been my verse since I was 19 years old, and I will not let it go. So just the idea that God will do exceedingly abundantly above, and that's not even just in the realm of blessings too, but whatever I think is going to happen, God always blows my mind. It's not always just monetary. Sometimes it's with my clients, with my career paths, with the people that I meet. It was on my graduation hat when I got my bachelor's degree, and I still have it so beat up and raggedy, but I hold on to that verse like this.
Oh, that's so good. And last question, what is one talent that you do not have, but you wish you did, and why?
One time that I wish that I wish I was a better athlete. I wish I could like play basketball better or like throw football further. So that athletic department, like I go to the gym and do gym stuff, but I'm not like an athlete. And I do believe that God just has to give it to you. There's a little bit of, you can work as hard as you want, but there's just a little bit of like a little sprinkle from God, like, here you go. And that sprinkle, he didn't give it to me. He gave it to me in other things, but and like being an athlete, he was like, just go get these books. So yeah. And I wish I could like play basketball better or like I would love to play with the boys. Like I truly would just like to go play basketball with the boys and have a good I just suck. Like dribbling, pat, like I'm the worst. I wish I was better.
That's the first, but I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is it. Please make sure you tell people where they can find you. If you have anything coming up that you want them to know about, share all the things.
Yeah, so that hashtag right there is going to take you everywhere you need to go. I just started that Instagram, so ph.d.loading. I just started a TikTok, ph.d.loading, and I actually about to launch my first YouTube vlog. I just want to vlog my experience as a PhD student because so many people are intrigued. So I was like, okay, well, let me figure that out. So yeah, ph.d.loading. You'll find me everywhere with that. So yeah, stay tuned. I'm hoping to push out more content before the end of the year.
Yay, that's so exciting. Okay, so again, thank you so much for joining me. It was so amazing to have you. I do not take it for granted. PhD is a lot of work, so thank you for taking time to do this and to
Yeah.
share. Um, and that is it, y'all. So we're gonna get off, and I'm just gonna play an outro video, and that's it. So thank you for joining me. And as always, you can create a new story for yourself, your family, and those that you have influence over. Bye, y'all.